to be pretty close. Hi!
Hello!
It's Nekole and Allena again.
Good morning.
So, we're on a little bit early today because I'm trying to see if I can figure out how to get it on our public page. I can only figure out how to do this on my personal page.
So, we're going to figure it out.
Okay, let's see. So that's why we're early.
So,
hi, Anna. Okay, let's see if I can do this.
Share it while it's happening.
Yeah, that's what I want to see. So I think first I gotta make it. You say hi to everyone while I'm doing this.
Hello, everybody. Guess what we're doing? We're going to talk about being a sex-positive parent today. Oh, my goodness sakes. I think it's going to work. Is it going to work?
Every week we learn something new, right? Okay.
All right.
I shared it. I shared it there. Ooh, it says I shared it there.
All right.
Okay. It's there.
Yay.
God, it's weird to look at me doing things. Okay.
Can you share it onto my page while you're at it?
Let's see if I can tag you.
Tag me. Yeah.
Here now.
Friends time. Share on a friend's timeline.
There we go.
There I am.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So, last week we did our first... Well, okay, I guess we should do the formal thing.
Right.
Who are you?
I'm Allena Gabosh.
I'm Nekole Shapiro. What's your life mission statement?
Oh, my personal mission
Yeah.
statement? My personal mission statement is to remove shame and bring joy to sexuality. And I've had that for quite a long time. I've been working on it for quite a long time.
I don't have a life mission statement. Maybe be myself.
That's a good one. Everybody should have a mission statement.
I know you always say that.
I always say that. So.
I don't do shoulds very well though.
Well, I know you're not a shoulda, woulda, coulda. Yeah, that's okay. I still love you.
Okay,
so,
good.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see. So we run a thing called Raising Kids Without Sexual Shame. It's a Facebook page. It's a facilitated conversation that we are more than eager to have with as many people want to have us come have that conversation with them. And then we found out this Facebook Live thing existed, and we said, well, why don't we start playing around with this? Mm-hmm. So last week we did our first one. If you go to Raising Kids Without Sexual Shame, you can see the recording of it. There were some good questions.
There was great questions on it, yeah.
Yeah. I'll say I never think these conversations don't have something in them that are, I find really useful. Yeah. And then... Well, we had such a good time. I said, well, do you want to do it again?
I'm like, sure.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And then this time I thought maybe we would have a topic. So this is the first time we've kind of had a topic. And my thought was, what does it mean to raise your children sex positive? So the first time I heard this term, so I'm sitting in my neighbor's house and nursing my kiddo, probably
right.
my 2-year-old at that time, and I hear two people are working. So my neighbor is working with Terry Chalky at the computer, and I don't know what they're doing, and all of a sudden I hear this thing, the Kinky Carnival.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like,
what's that?
The what? And then Terry, being Terry, who's very open to talking about what she does all the time, helped me learn about that there was this community here called the sex that was labeled sex positive, and I was like, that sounds like a good idea, sex positive. So all I heard was this term, sex positive, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So I pretty much just rolled with it from there. And then people started asking me, oh, but sex positive means this or means that. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I think you can speak much more to that, which is the history of the street
of sex positive.
Yeah.
The sex positive street.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Why don't you talk about it?
The term sex positive has been around for maybe a decade or so. But in order to really talk about how I'm connected to it, I go back.
It's got to be around for more, because the center's been around for more than
the center was the sex positive. Yeah, that's true. So it's okay. So I just get my times frames. We've been around for 18 years, going on 18 years. And we started off, we were the Sex Positive Community Center. And the word sex positive 18 years ago was not used that often. And we were one of the first to claim it as an honorific for who we were as an organization. Even before that, though, I was creating sex positive culture and didn't even know it in the early 90s because my former husband and I were putting on these really sex positive parties. And we were introducing people to concepts of being around a lot of different people who had a lot of different ideas around sexuality. And that the basis of sex positivity is that all sex, all consensual sex, is life affirming and can be life affirming and doesn't have to be just about procreation. It can be about spirituality. It can be about pure pleasure. It can be a mixture of everything. It doesn't have to have one simple, well, you only have sex to have babies. As we know, that's not true for most of us. And it's about life affirming, and that sex positivity is an attitude that sex isn't about shame. Sex isn't about forcing somebody, being on top of somebody and holding them down, which some people use sex for that. And sex
right, if it's consensual and you know that that's life affirming for you.
Yeah.
You just said something that I think relates to what we want to talk about today, which is being a sex positive parent. So one of the things that she just said was that not all sex is about making babies. Which, as a parent, right, if we take that to how we're going to talk to our children about sex, that opens the whole gamut up to what we're going to talk about, right? I mean, for sure, what I would say is sex education happens in my house every day. It's part of what I believe is true about parenting, whether we're talking about it or not talking about it. Like, by not talking about it, we're still educating our children about sex, like almost like through denial. Right? Like, I'm educating you that we're in denial about sex. Right. So, we enculturate our children to the conversation around sexuality. So if as a sex positive person, I am very much aware of the fact that sex, we teach a 4-hour workshop. What is sex?
That's right.
And
which is a hard workshop for the people who attend it.
Yeah. And one of my favorite feedback things we've gotten is, I walked out with more questions than answers.
Which we love.
Yeah. So, in the context of raising kids sex positive, we have to step back from the general idea that sex is only for
procreation.
Well, anything, really, right?
Right. It's only for married couples. It's only for procreation. It's only if you're in love. It's only whatever it might be. It's only.
Yeah, right. I think that's one of the hardest things for people who do work with us is to get out of this idea that there is an answer and into the idea of exploration and curiosity, right, which really we know feeds education far better than a sense of I know, right? A certainty. Yeah. I do love math and math. Math knows things, but then I think once you get a point, they really don't. So it always falls apart at some point. And yeah, thinking about that class on what is sex, right? It's really confronting. So, no, this is what sex is. Well, we have a 5-page Excel spreadsheet list of questions that are 12-point font?
Yeah.
Of what is sex for people to answer, and they all have different answers. So as I'm raising my children sex positive, it's very much about exploration and curiosity, and
celebrating that.
And celebrating that. Mm-hmm. And it really at that point makes what I experienced in 8th grade health class, sex education, right?
Hey, at least you had it. We didn't have it.
Yeah.
In the 4th grade, we got separated. 5th grade, we got separated from the boys and got told about tampons. No, they weren't tampons back then. We called about pads because women didn't use tampons in the 60s.
Right, because then you're not a virgin.
Because you weren't a virgin, right? Yeah. So.
You saw, right? New York is going to start giving tampons to. Yeah, it's so good.
That's right.
So, we just said a lot. I don't know how that's landing.
I have a story to share.
Okay, cool.
So this past Sunday was a weekend was solstice at
Yeah.
the Fremont Fair,
Right.
and the center had a
Well,
booth.
wait, let's tell them. Do you know, if you don't know about Seattle solstice,
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
it starts with 300 naked bike riders. So that gives you a little, at least.
At least, yeah. It's a parade and a celebration of solstice that happens in Fremont, which is a little community here in Seattle. And they have a big fair type open air thing where you can have booths and stuff. And the center had a booth there. And right across the away from us was the nudist camp, which was really great, which was another whole thing, which was wonderful. But it was a fabulous experience, and I got to meet and talk to a whole lot of people. Mm-hmm. And I met this one sex positive parent, this woman that she embodied it, and she told me about her 3-year-old daughter who discovered masturbation mm-hmm. at the age of 2.5, mm-hmm. and how she encouraged it instead of shaming her, mm-hmm. and basically told her own mother, no, she gets to do this, mm-hmm. and taught her about privacy. Mm-hmm. And now her daughter at 3, when they're taking a bath, she'll go, Mama, can you give me some privacy so I can tickle my clitoris? And that was the most beautiful thing. I was almost in tears. Then I got to meet the 3-year-old because her husband had picked him up, and I met this beautiful little girl who was just full of life. And what an awesome thing for a parent to teach their child that it's okay to tickle their clitoris, to be that,
Yeah, we don't need
loving,
that.
being that loving with themselves, right? And I was so
and
in
you just,
awe.
What you're making me think about too is part of what I find when we get outside of the paradigm of thinking this is what sex is, and thinking, right, part of what we say is nobody knows how to raise kids without sexual shame because we've been so enculturated to control the power of sexuality
Right.
through shame. Mm-hmm. And so really our children are educators to us of what it would look like to not have sexual shame. And then at that point, like, what do we come up with as parents? Like, okay, I don't want to shame them for touching their clitoris, for instance, and I'm still the parent, so now what's my next step? Right? Which was what really fed us starting this whole thing, mm-hmm. was we wanted to get adults together to brainstorm.
Have a dialogue. Yeah.
So one of the things that has definitely, when we take away the ideas about sex, what we have is the experiences. And so for this little 2-year-old to already know her experience of tickling her clitoris, for instance, well, now she's building on her own experience instead of these ideas that are imposed upon her, which make it really hard. It's really hard to navigate the world when you're not in your own experience of the world.
That's
right? Right? Because you can't, boundaries are dependent upon our ability to know what our experience is. So if I don't know what my experience of my body is in the context of sex, how on earth am I going to, I almost swore I didn't because this is public on Facebook. Isn't that so funny?
You can still swear on Facebook.
I can't swear on the circus floor, so now it's like messing with me.
Shit.
You're gonna kick me out of the circus. So, how can I find my boundaries in the context of sexuality if I don't know what my experience, my lived experience of sexuality is? Yeah. Right? My body. Okay, someone has a question. My 10-year-old son, who is on the autism spectrum but high functioning, is starting to constantly make sexual jokes. I really don't know how to handle it because he has a hard time understanding what to say in public versus in private and how to teach him shame, but it's clear that he has questions. I've told him if he has questions, he can ask me anything, but it's obvious that he already feels embarrassed about asking actual questions, but is really into making the jokes. Ah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Can you help? Oh, I like that. That's really, I think that you have the clarity that he's, right, the jokes become an invitation for a conversation.
Right. That's what it sounds like.
So there's a lot in here.
So this is kind of on the same line as when your child decides to masturbate in front of grandma at the age of 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever, is teaching children about other people's consent to be
Right.
part of something. So before you make a sexual joke, you need to ask consent if I can tell you a joke. And then the people around you get to choose not to tell a joke, not to hear your joke, or to have to listen to your
Yeah,
joke.
you're making me
Yeah.
think about when we teach, we have confidentiality as one of our discussion guidelines,
Right.
and we always say anything we say share with anybody, everybody, right? That's part of why we're doing what we're doing. But so if you're comfortable with it, I would maybe if it were me, I would probably say to my son, I'm fine with these conversations. I'm fine with any of these jokes you want to make, and then let's go from that joke on. But everybody's not fine with it, right? And then go into this consent
Yeah.
conversation. And it's perfect that you just asked this question along the lines of boundaries, because that's really what we're talking about, right? Or different people's boundaries. Like I was just making the joke about the circus floor. Like it's a problem for some people if their kids all of a sudden start swearing, and it's a problem for this organization if the blame gets placed on this organization, right? So I got to consider all of that in the context of me just wanting to say whatever is on my mind. So that's a boundary, right? The organization has imposed a boundary upon me, and I have a lot of respect for this organization, so I want to take that into consideration.
And one of the things that I've noticed I have really wonderful friends who are, several friends who are on the high functioning spectrum on the autism spectrum, is that they're pretty good at grasping clear instructions, so like talking about boundaries, talking about that. And I think the more clear you are, the more just matter of fact about it, rather than, oh my God, we got to talk about this, but more of just real matter of fact, real clear. This is just how the world works. And I think it will help.
Great. She just said, I love,
Yay.
Hi, Gina Kirby,
Yay.
rock star.
So I love having him ask consent to tell me or someone else a joke. See that, and that's simple. That's something that he's going to be able to grasp easy. So
that's about consent, which right there already you're teaching about boundaries and you're teaching about consent just by setting that up, right? It becomes a practice of that.
And that means we have to respect our kids' consents and our kids' boundaries at the same time.
Okay, but that's a whole other
Yeah.
time. Hold on. So, but the other thing that I hear that's in there is that you have an opportunity to go from those jokes into education.
Right.
It's a total teaching opportunity. So I'm thinking about, there was this teenage girl that was having a hard time at home, and she was living in our house for a while. We were trying to help them. Hi, Craig. My older daughter read over her shoulder, fuck, I said it, haha. So she read it. It was the first time she'd really heard it, because I have done pretty good. And then she came upstairs, she could tell, how it is, they can tell with the energy of it that it meant something or whatever. And so she comes upstairs. And so what I chose to do with that opportunity was we turned it into a word study. We went,
fabulous.
I gave her the whole, these are the ones that people get the most triggered by. These are the ones that people are the most uncomfortable with. This is what it actually means, yet this is how it's used. I mean, we literally turned it into a study of swear words. And one of my favorite things that came out of that was my children decided that the N-word was Nazi, because they couldn't understand why the N-word would be a negative thing in the context that it is. But Nazis are a problem, right?
Oh my God, that's awesome.
So I don't know if you understand, if that helps. But right, I'm constantly trying to find openings to educate, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, now you started talking about something else. You started talking about kids' consent, which
Right. Well, but it falls along that if we are going to expect our children to ask consent for, I need to consent to tell a joke, then we need to be conscious about the times that we don't ask them consent. And of course there's definitely a balance between safety and and consent. Sometimes we have to take and our children's safety comes first. So it's like, I'm going to pick you up and carry you, even though you don't consent to be picked up and carried right now.
Right. I mean, you
Right.
can go watch the video for the last time, because I went
We
into
talked
my
about
whole
that,
thing
yeah.
about car seats. Oh.
Right. Oh my God. Yeah. And that said, though, most of the time, though, we can check in with the kids, ask their consent.
Right. So Gina says, how about making them hug relatives? Right. That's exactly.
Don't make them hug relatives. Ew.
Well, so let's go back a bit, because what we decided to talk about today is what it means to raise our kids sex positives, right? So, and then that for me extends into body positive.
That's a good one.
So part of raising my kids to be body positive is for them to know how their body feels in response to things, right? So if somebody wants to give them a hug, I don't care who they are, and they're not feeling it, I want them to say no. Right? It's not even just grandma. It's like, I want them to know what their physical no feels like, so that they have their no available to them. And then what do we know? Is if you don't have your no, you don't have your yes. Right? So going back to pleasure, the lessons around pleasure and
Right.
knowing what sex actually works for you, how can you determine that if you don't know what your body feels like? So as soon as we as parents override their no, their physical embodied no, then they're lost.
That's right. Yeah.
Amanda, my kids are the ones who trigger teachable moments. They are the awesome teachers and learners. Right.
That's very true. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know exactly what you're alluding to in your experience, but you could write it here if you want to share it, and we'll read it. But poor wireless connection. Okay, I'm going to shut this down and see if it helps. So is that they don't have the shame that most of us are enculturated with. So watching them be free in many ways teaches us more what being, what it would look like to have no shame.
That's right.
And I just because I was doing all this research on shame, we don't want no shame, right? I mean, what was it? Brene Brown, I think, was saying that you're a sociopath. But it's not to be controlled by shame. Like our sexual, right? I want to feel some shame if I hurt somebody, or some guilt if I hurt somebody. I don't want to feel shame because I'm turned on.
Well, so maybe not using the word shame, but using the word guilt or responsibility and those kind of things. And because shame has got, for me, it's got such a negative connotation, because most of the shame that I've encountered over my life has been around sex and relationships and body and all. It's very personal stuff, you know. And but yeah, if you do something that hurts somebody, then you need to have some guilt around it. There's of course. But children aren't born with shame, right? It's something that they learn, and they don't learn it just from their parents. They learn it from their neighbors. They learn it from school. They learn it from the kids they play with. You know, it all builds up.
For sure.
And it's the parents who are the first line of defense against it, so to speak. Yeah.
So Gina asks, do you think this is the reason so many women choose not to breastfeed? I mean, I don't see how sexual shame couldn't get in the way of people breastfeeding. I mean, even I have a good story with my mom one day. So my mom breastfed me till pretty ripe age. I don't know. Well into 2, I think. At least 2. But, you know, she's an extended breastfeeding advocate. And she's a woman born in 1950 in Detroit, right? So she... and I wasn't. I was born in Hawaii by a hippie. So who started a massage school. So we're at this Thai restaurant in Hawaii. And I've got on like a, little strap, like a tank top, like a really, I don't know, like a camisole kind of a thing. But like, it's fitted more like a sports bra kind of. And one of my kids wanted to nurse. I don't remember how old she was. And so I just pulled my boob out and I started breastfeeding the baby. And my mom got uncomfortable. This is my mom. Like, people know my mom. This doesn't make any sense, right? And she got uncomfortable because the server looked like maybe the server was uncomfortable.
See, she was feeling
that sense of responsibility for the server, right? And so, luckily she's my mom, so I didn't care. And I looked at her and I was like, we're going to do it anyway. But there was, this is how the shame can get passed down from generation to generation so easily. And I use my mom as an example because she's extremely body positive and
even though she still had that reaction.
Extremely pro breastfeeding, and even there, her sense of responsibility for that young man's discomfort was about to outweigh her grandchild being fed, right? And what's really beautiful about my mom is that she's who knows that I am her child that will have less shame than her, and so she is like, okay, right? She's not in I'm the authority and I must teach you that this is inappropriate. I hate that word, inappropriate, by the way. Okay, we got some things written here. I hope that covered what you wanted, Gina.
Well, Gina did say something here about the shame around
our bodies.
The bodies and how it was breastfeeding was arousing, and that's everything I've been talking to. Anybody I know that's breastfed has had that same reaction. And it is normal.
And that's cultural, right? I mean, the other thing, coming from Hawaii, which has so many different cultures, and then going to New York City and such a different culture, and then studying essentially cultural anthropology, like, let's just throw this way back, right? And look at any of our social norms. So whereas in, one of the examples that I often use is in the ashram, we wore saris where my midriff would be showing, but I couldn't show my ankles or my knees. Right. And whereas in American society, if I show my midriff, that's considered more, ooh, you must want it, maybe, than if I show my ankle.
Yeah.
Right. Or we were just talking about countries where if you're raped, you're the person that gets in trouble, not the rapist.
Right.
So same with breastfeeding, right? And so this is part of what we love about these conversations being really a conversation where everybody shares their personal experience, and because then we get to learn from each other. Makes me think about the reclaiming pleasure from the word slut, or what did we name it?
I don't know.
And why did we do that, you want to say?
Because the powers that be at the school would not let us put the word slut, even though it was a slut-shaming workshop, in the title of the workshop.
Yeah, so we were asked to come to a school and teach on slut shaming, and it was about body positivity, basically.
Yeah.
And we couldn't put the word slut in the title. So anyway,
we called it reclaiming our
pleasure
or something
from sexual shame, which we're going to teach again.
Yes.
August 7th.
Yes,
we're
calling it slut shaming this time.
No, we're not.
Oh, darn it! I know.
A day of reclaiming pleasure from sexual shame. That's what it is for the Foundation for Sex Positive Culture.
Yes.
So, in that context, what was really beautiful was this was a super diverse campus, and so part of what we had was everybody talk about their culture's definition of the word slut. And in a couple of them, their culture didn't have a word specifically for slut. It was prostitute. Like, they're the same thing. So again, it's like the more that we become curious. So I think a lot of what sex positivity is for me is about curiosity. The more curious we become, the more we can learn. And then the more that we learn, the more that we can choose what works for us.
Right. That's right.
And that includes what's going on in my body. Okay, we got to catch up here. I've felt that way too, but rationalized it by telling myself books are multitasking, just like the rest of women. And also I was sleep deprived.
About breastfeeding.
Sleep deprived. Yeah, I know. It's so hard. So much shame around our bodies. How many do you think quit once they feel aroused by breastfeeding? Now, that arousal thing is really interesting, right? I mean, Gina, because women are sinners. You mean because we wanted knowledge?
Yeah.
Heaven forbid. Boobs. Fuck, I love boobs, though. I just really care for them. Arousal. So one of the first classes I created was, I think you asked me to come be in something. And I was like, okay, I'll teach on the intersection between sex and birth.
That was so awesome.
And, oh, boobs, not books. Or both.
Yeah.
So, as I started talking about the intersection between sex and birth, what became clear to me is that some people have more of an oxytocin-ish type correlation to sex, and some people have more of a dopamine context for sex. And the people that were oriented around the dopamine type of sex could not understand at all how that would be related to birth. And so when I think about the arousal of breastfeeding and the oxytocin that's flooding our systems, Todd is here. Woot! This is good stuff. Sheshtin Uvnas Moberi, who wrote The Oxytocin Factor and who's done 35 plus years of oxytocin research, which, honestly, I think she's probably one of the main reasons any of us are even talking about it. In her book, she says the reason that she decided to become an MD PhD and learn more about oxytocin was ultimately that she wanted to know why she felt so good while she was breastfeeding. That was really what inspired her to go get an MD PhD.
That's pretty amazing.
So, and again, that's in a different culture, right? She's Swedish. It's much more acceptable. It's, they learn about sex ed from like super young. It's a very different contextual context to start. Yeah, it's in her book, Gina. It's a great book, but you don't have to read it. You can just watch my class because I like sum it up. And she's written more. She's definitely one of my sheroes. So yeah, I think that that even can be confusing, is that there are these different, again, going back to sex positive and curiosity, is like there's different types of sexual pleasure. There's different types of arousal. There's different types of pleasure that we can experience in our bodies, and those types of pleasures also have different ramifications, right? If I have a dopamine high, I will also drop. If I have an oxytocin arousal, I probably will lose track of time. Like there's just like certain things, right? So these are parts of the things I will educate my children about, right? Like I will want them to understand these differences so that they can make their own best life choices. You need to watch that classic. Stop calling yourself awful, Gina. On the other side, I felt so tense and I don't know, embarrassed even in private. I couldn't even release enough oxytocin to let down. Yeah. I don't think you're alone there, my friend. I don't. You just come over here. We'll love you up. Love you up.
We'll share the oxytocin.
Mm-hmm. Then the other thing that we know about oxytocin is that it has a positive feedback loop, and that bonding increases oxytocin. So if we think about the cultures where bunches of women get together and they're all nursing together, it's really creating that oxytocin loop where everybody's feeding on each other's oxytocin. So as opposed to going and being somewhere where you have to hide and cover up and feel ashamed that you, have a breast or are a woman, right? Just even that in some cultures is shameful. So, these are the ways that beyond just us getting the right to be able to publicly breastfeed, are we really supporting breastfeeding? That's a whole other thing. Any other questions? What little oxytocin gets trapped under there is like a hot boxing oxytocin. I'm just thinking about what my kid would have done with that rebozo. Oh my God. It's already 11:30.
That was a quick half hour.
Any last minute things you want to ask before we go? Thanks for all the breastfeeding questions. Didn't expect it to go there. My boys hated being covered up. Yeah, totally. And I think that, again, that's about, even as we're having this conversation about each mother and our experience with breastfeeding, It's about our boundaries, right? So it's about me knowing that I'm uncomfortable in this situation or that I'm not uncomfortable in this
That's right.
situation and being able to create my own boundaries around that. And my children doing the same thing, right? Like my kids liked to nurse laying down. Now I got pregnant in a pre-med program at Columbia University in New York City. I didn't lay down very often. And here I had this kid that would not nurse unless I would lay down. I mean,
It's probably good
talk
for you.
about some boundaries and negotiation. Okay, guys, you can keep going, I think, but we have said that these are going to be a half an hour. We hope to do them again as the scheduling allows. This will be a recording that'll be up. Anything we want to say?
Um, I was like reading what Amanda was saying about teaching body positivity to our children. Um, let's talk about that maybe next time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll make that our next one.
Yeah. Body positivity.
Yeah. Okay, great. Yep, slow down, mommy.
Yeah.
I have a little discomfort around that. Love you too.
Love you guys. Thank
Bye.
you.
See you
Bye.
later.